there, good morning from wherever you are around the world. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. Today, I am Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning. I'd really like to keep the date today, but I don't even know what date it is. I think it's the 11th. Is it the 11th already?
Well,
it's the 11th day of January already. Yes. When did we say Happy New Year? Well, it's still the new year. If you're just slowly sliding into the new year, it's still the new year. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Maukwe Yusuf.
Well, I'm certainly envying some people today. If you're just entering work week, 11 days
after.
That's the dream. Well, welcome to the nation's commercial capital, Lagos. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
And if you're just sliding into the new year isn't waiting for anyone, so catch up fast as we have. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
You know, there's been so many reactions from how the dailies led yesterday concerning elections, holding or not, the challenge or the thing with security. And they're picking up on it as well today, which you get to see soon rather than later. But today we're picking up on what we also stayed on, broached some part of that yesterday, which had to do with the kidnap of those train passengers in Benin City, the Edo State capital. Yesterday, we understand the police says 7 more people have been rescued. So from their statement, they say 7 plus those who have been rescued previously now comes down to 20. But while the MD of the Nigerian Railway Corporation spoke yesterday, you could actually sense the frustration in what he was doing, suspecting that, look, some people somewhere appear to be pulling the strings and how some of these things are playing themselves out. How come we had this attack and then you had so much proposals? He thought that there's some sabotage going on somewhere. But you know, all of his frustrations notwithstanding, not that we're not taking that into cognizance. I mean, anyone who's trying to get things done will be frustrated if he feels that he's being sabotaged or certain things are not going on right. But there are still questions about how they are going about securing that rail transport sector. I mean, yesterday as well, remember, the former AIG did say, not that there's supposed to be, there is actually a police railway command. And you get to hear some of these things that actually exist with the police, and you wonder, whoa, in this same country, which suggests that if they actually pay a lot of attention to ensuring that all of those agencies and all of those aspects of policing that exist are allowed to do their jobs or function as they ought to, we might even get a lot more results than we are getting today, as a matter of fact. But I know that there's still a lot more on this one, guys.
I really do sympathize, or shall I say empathize, with Mr. Okiria, but I empathize more with the families of those, whose loved ones have been abducted. And I can understand the frustrations and the, how do I put it now, just in case you're wondering who Mr. Okiria is, he's the managing director of the National Railway Corporation. But this is basically what we now have in today's world. Because, while speaking yesterday, it occurred to me that this is what the aviation industry had to deal with in the wake of the 9/11 bombings. And this was an international, threat. So countries all over the world had to adapt to, in addition to, in addition to searching people, not just for hard drugs, etc., and, developing technology to continue to spot people, they had to develop technology to spot people who would want to kill other people on the planes. And as a result, a lot of us, everybody could not carry liquid in their hand luggages. These were, regulations that were made as a result of one attack, or maybe even more attempted attacks. But the moment 9/11 happened, if the aviation industry changed. In many other countries, you also see that, security has been taken to a new high because they now know that there is nowhere where terrorists cannot attack. Is it the train stations? There certain things that you cannot do in the train stations? And I see that, and these things make our operations, the operations of these industries more complex, more expensive, and then it means that a manager really now has to be a manager thinking about security, thinking about operations, thinking about efficiency, thinking about even sometimes the environment. You know, so many things that, you know, a manager now needs to take on board. And it can be pretty frustrating when you're doing that in a climate like ours, where sometimes if you're an agency and other agencies are failing and they're not exactly, you know, doing what they need to do to make your own work more efficient, you know, then you have a problem on your hands. And so I much as I sympathize with him, I have to say, sir, you know, if this is too tough a job, I'm sure you can find something else to do. It's not so hard. I'm sure that there'll be other things to do if you think that this is just too much, because this is the reality. We've seen what has happened along Abuja-Kaduna railway line. People were kidnapped and they were kept for months. Yeah. In that state, and eventually the state was able to get them out, whether through negotiations or whatever. This is the reality that we now need to face. Even, you know, individual travelers, you know, as an individual, you now have to weigh very thoroughly the consequences of your traveling. You pray, yes, but you have to decide whether that trip is really important. You know, families are having to make those kind of decisions. Should I go by air? Should I go by road? Oftentimes when you see the airport's full, it's not really because they love to travel by air. It's because they have weighed the options and that's what works for them. So, how do I put it now? There needs to be a real consideration of what has happened. This is our new reality. I know that the Nigeria Railway Corporation says you now cannot travel if you do not have a NIN or you do not have a certain identification. I know that they also search. They have scanners at the railway station. But then we have to ask, what is the level of security? What is the minimum acceptable level of security, either at the stations or along the lines that we can put in place? As we emphasized yesterday, a lot of money has been spent on this. We've taken loans, which we're going to need to pay back. There have even been questions as to whether or not we're paying enough. You know, yes, when you use the rail line, whether we're paying enough to be able to recover, at least pay back or service the loans. There have been questions, and people say, oh, no, that's not the reason why we did the rail lines. That the efficient, what we will eventually get in the other areas of the economy should be able to pay back what it is that we're doing. So we cannot afford for the rail lines not to work. They are way too important in our infrastructure. We cannot afford for people not to have confidence in using these lines. We have to have people looking forward to them, you know, using them more efficiently. And we cannot let saboteurs, whether they're saboteurs, whether they're terrorists, whether they're criminals, we don't care the name. They cannot win the day. The Nigerian state, at the end of the day, must prevail. This is back to you now, or this is to you, Fayade and Bukola.
Indeed, Maupe, the kind of return on investment that we're getting, you know, from the train stations and these attacks is not exactly the kind of ROT that we need, especially with the quantum of investment that the federal government has putting into the rail tracks, you know, the whole rail works in its entirety. And in our interaction with the MD of the NRC yesterday, you know, I noted not just his frustration, but he's restrained to talk about certain things that he would rather talk about. He gives an insight into the fact that perhaps there are certain things that he knows that he would rather not reveal, certain sensitive information that he knows that would rather not reveal. And he, you know, but from what he revealed, there are certain things that are, you know, unarguable, undebatable. Look at the Igwebe train station. It's porous. There's no perimeter fencing, you know, either on the side where you have the station or on the other side, you know, where you have the rail lines. The traditional ruler in the report sent in by our correspondent also rightly noted that he's been there for 35 years, has never observed any such incident. It says a lot, you know, that train stations are becoming targeted by bandits and insurgents. If I had the opportunity yesterday, I also wanted to confirm from the MD if indeed it is true that the kidnappers are now demanding ransom to the tune of 630 million naira. So let's go to the train station in Moniya. We now have to look at all of the train stations that have been built by the federal government and check the state of security. How well secure are our train stations? I did a quick search and realized that there is no perimeter fencing at the Moniya train station in Ibadan as well. We haven't recovered yet from the Abuja-Kaduna train attack, in which we had quite a number of deaths. And, the victims stayed in the kidnappers' den for the better part of the year last year. It was agonizing, it was frustrating for family members of the victims who were kidnapped. We can't afford that kind of experience yet again for another set of family members this time around. It's pleasant to know that additional seven have been rescued, but security agents must go right to the root of the incident and ensure that all will be rescued. But then again, more importantly, these train stations must be secure. I also recall last year, just as I wrap up now, the former Minister of Transportation was saying that at the offtake, there was security surveillance equipment that was incorporated into the construction of the railway. But then again, because it was too expensive, the federal government didn't go all the way with it. How can we put in place such an investment without ensuring something that would be, strong enough, a security architecture that would be strong enough to forestall such attacks? I wish I had the answer to that question. Coyote.
Well, eventually, the federal government had to approve about over 700 million naira to at least secure that corridor, but that's just one of many. So, we'll have to pay that cost eventually. And, that will be one extra person rescued. So in total, it is 7. So we're still looking forward to rescuing about 23 of those abducted, intended passengers. The idea behind this is so that we'll keep attention on it. We saw what we experienced during the Abuja-Kaduna incident, 7 months, and we do not want this. Yes, there were more people kidnapped, 62 people. This is just about 30 people. But it reminds me of when that American citizen was kidnapped, just one in Niger, and then the operation was between Niger and Nigeria, and the American government, just one person, ensured that that person was released, deployed literally all of its arsenal, collaborated and all of that, and ensured that that one person was released. We have about 23 people still in captivity, and that is one too many. So we'll keep attention to ensure that the authorities do right by the people, their family, and end this episode sooner rather than later. Chamberlain.
Well, yes, guys, because, you could imagine if they said it's not completed, the security measures that have been put in place. Because, look, the ultimate intention, or at least what we'd like to see moving forward, is people need to be able to move cargo through the rails and free, ensure that the pressure on the roads is not as much or is greatly reduced, probably to a very, very large extent. But how will that happen when you see this kind of scenario? But unfortunately, the thing is, they have to find a solution to this. You can't just sit back and, you could be frustrated, but that's why you have the job. But the minister, the MD, all of them.
Indeed.
They have to
all
find
of them.
a solution to all of these things, because that's why, while they were trying to construct the rail, they should have thought about all of these things. I'm sure they should have, because if they didn't, I hate to imagine they didn't anyways. Anyway, just give us a moment. We will be back with a look at some of the dailies here today. All right, welcome back. Let's take you through some of the dailies and take a look at Vanguard newspaper. It's a follow-up from yesterday. There you go. Fear not. Elections will hold. FG. The riders are as much. INEC clarifies issues to present voters register to parties today. 6 commitments of all stakeholders to peaceful polls, promises legacy of free, fair, credible elections. You're not used to those words by now about our elections. I just wonder what else you've been listening to.
They come in that order: free, fair, credible.
Oh dear.
You almost can't say elections without saying them.
At some point, I think they'll just add substantially compliant, because people always go to God anyways.
Yeah.
So And then you see INEC's INEC's alarm, irresponsible reps. We mustn't give in to anti-democratic forces, Labour Party. Insecurity, not enough reason to postpone polls, APC, PCC. INEC shouldn't give APC opportunity to continue to punish Nigerians, PDP. And then the last one says, Pandef, Afenifere, others speak. So you'll always expect this kind of scenarios, but don't worry, we'll focus on that here today on the program and just put it in as much context as we can, as much relevant context as we can. Yesterday we had the NRC boss, and he also did say security plans for rail stations incomplete. That's ascribed to the NRC boss, so we expect that. So when it's complete, what then do we expect? And then, because beyond being able to enter there with your name, today you see that they are raiding the stations. So they didn't have the need to raid around the stations or with that facility. But if they say they want to incorporate local residents, communities,
yeah, that's very important.
Yeah,
very important, because the stations are usually in out of the way places. Yes. So that is a component that security architecture in this country needs to factor in and take very, very seriously. But even though they play the ostrich, look at it. Don't they have civilian JTF, and they got results with civilian JTF, and they always talk about volunteering information. So if they do strengthen all of that, you could imagine the results that we can get. 45 days to go. Federal government dismisses threats to 2023 election. That's how the leadership is leading this morning. They have this, says there's no cause for alarm. Elections will hold as planned. Afenifere warns against postponement, cancellation. AGF asks governors to join fight against insecurity. So you find all of the details on page 4. But just in case you're wondering where we are, it's 45 days to the elections. I can't just wait for them to come and go, you know? Let's count down. But hey, 45 days is not so far away. Yeah, almost.
Almost there.
Not far away at all. You also find on the front page this morning, nobody can blackmail me over illicit wealth. Guess who's speaking? You don't have to guess for long. It's right there on the front page, PMB.
Okay.
President Muhammadu Buhari, page 7.
What about his associates?
Big question, but at least him. He doesn't know about that one. Him, you can't blackmail him over illicit wealth. So, why we asked banks to load ATMs with new notes? I just might try this today. Never mind how much is in my account, but even if it's 1,000 naira, let me see if the ATM will produce a new note that is 1,000. Because you know the banks are even supposed to be loading 200 naira notes.
And that has not been happening.
In the ATM. That's what CBN said. I hope they're following CBN's instructions.
I think CBN gave them, I think they said from the 13th, you have to begin issuing new notes to customers.
Indeed. So try
from 13th
today.
to what, 31? Is that enough time?
Well, the idea is for you to do more transfers. So they're hoping that you'll do more, what they call that now, more bank transfers and deal less with cash. But in the event that you need cash for anything, as you will always need, no matter how big you are or how small you are, you will always need at least petty cash. You know, small change here, small change there. You will always need that. When you need that and you need to go to your ATM or your bank for whatever reason, please make sure that they're giving you new notes. If the banks still don't have, then
what do we then do?
We ask CBN.
So before I deposit the money, I'll have to ask, are you giving me new notes for this deposit that I'm going to get?
Deposit or withdrawal. You only get new notes if you're withdrawing.
No, if you're depositing, you have to withdraw, of course. You can't deposit and leave empty-handed now. Come on.
I don't understand. Okay, like if you're going to exchange, you mean?
No, you deposit a huge amount of money. But you have to deposit, you have to withdraw something to that. You can't, many people will not want to leave there.
If I have a huge deposit for instance, 500,000 naira, just imagine, and I go to the bank to deposit it, I can take out of my deposit.
You can still take, the limit is 500,000 for individual.
But the point I'm trying to make is if I'm going to deposit money, why would I need to withdraw at the same time?
It's a different story for different folks. People may, why did they have the money, why did they have the cash in the first place? They might want to carry out some very, what do you call it in National Assembly? Matters of urgent national importance. Urgent personal importance.
We have to ask what exactly you're talking about. When you're not a market woman or a market man, if you're a market woman or man and you have to go and deposit maybe monies that you've made at the end of the day, that's understandable. And I imagine that if you do need some money maybe for change or etc., the bank should be producing that money
thankfully,
in new notes.
They're asking us at the counter, what do you want to do with this?
They do.
Withdraw?
Oh, they do.
What you want to withdraw?
Yes, when you write your withdrawal, when you fill your withdrawal slip. And don't forget that the CBN governor did say that if you're going to withdraw large sums of money, we're going to make it difficult for you. You will feel uncountable. I can never forget that term. Uncountable forms, he said.
Why did they make it sound as if they want to punish you for your own money?
I don't know, but that's how it sounded. Anyways, on top of the nameplate, they have a number of other stories bordering largely on politics. Presidency, I'm not in race for Indigbo's turn, according to Obi. UK keen on helping Nigeria recover. That's according to Atiku. I'm going to leave it there for leadership newspapers.
Really?
And flip to Daily Trust. But somebody developed cough in the studio this morning when Malpa said that she would withdraw even if she had only 1,000 naira in her bank account. Right, Kayode?
Who was it?
Was it you?
I mean, you cough sometimes.
Okay. Okay. Let's go to Daily Trust newspapers. The Daily Trust newspaper is also talking about the elections this morning as it leads with this one. Insecurity knocks trail INEC's statement on elections postponement cancellation. Let's take a look at the riders. We warned insecurity may jeopardize polls as ascribed to the ACF. We won't accept postponement. Afeni Ferry. Hold Buhari APC responsible if, well, that hasn't been completed, but that's ascribed to the opposition, the main opposition party, the PDP. It's a call for action, CSOs. No cause for alarm, federal government. And to page 4 read, but Kayode and I were talking about it. Perhaps we should provide some clarity. It wasn't a blanket statement from the commission yesterday.
We did say that yesterday at the end of the show. It was just by the head of a training unit saying that it could be cancelled or even postponed, rather, in some
states.
Or some areas, particularly, maybe some constituencies, not Nigeria. But hey, I think it's been redacted or corrected right now by the dailies.
Yeah, trust some sections of the media to run what would seem like a big story, such that you gets the polity talking. Let's take a look at some more stories just beneath the nameplate. Atiku meets UK officials on economy, security, others. We saw the former vice president and presidential candidate of the PDP interacting with some UK officials yesterday. And this next one says, a fulfilled pledge to tackle Boko Haram. That's ascribed to Mr. President. And take a look at this one. Brain drain, FG to hire Nigerian doctors abroad. That's an interesting one. I recall one of our interactions sometime last year, when one of our resource persons was proposing a medical village, the setting up of a medical village where everything is available to our medical personnel to deter, this Japa syndrome and the search for greener pastures abroad. I guess that would be the way to go. I don't know what format this would take, but federal government declaring interest to hire Nigerian doctors abroad. Let's see how it goes.
Absolutely.
As we leave it there for Daily Trust newspaper.
I'll take a look at this Nigeria. About that Boko Haram story, recall, I think it was the Speaker of the Borno State Assembly saying that there's still 2 local governments under Boko Haram. So, these issues need to be brought forward. But this Nigeria has this as a lead. We're being denied access to PVC collection. How many times have we heard this? But take a look at the riders. Interreligious group raises alarm, urges INEC to tackle old politics designed to disenfranchise citizens. Come on. We've gone past all of this, so I imagine we should have gone past all of this. So what's going on there? But we'll provide some more insight on the program this morning, just so you know how to go about this, so we don't keep having this in the news. There's this one as well. Buhari banks on Tinubu to sustain legacy process. And just one more for you. Court sacks slapping APC senator bars him from February 25th senatorial poll. What a tag, what a way to describe him. It's on the inside pages. By the way, that story about that postponement that made rounds yesterday is also there on the front page. But let's leave it there for this, Nigeria.
Okay. Take a look at New Telegraph next at slapping Senator matter. Oh dear. The clock is ticking. 45 days to presidential poll. Fringe parties yet to commence campaigns. Look at the riders as APC, PDP, LP, NMPP intensify campaigns across Nigeria. Smaller parties lack level playing field, CMPP. They have good intentions but lack resources to actualize them, public affairs analyst. And then you see APC has structures to win presidential election, Professor Medeni there. But it says smaller parties but lack level playing field. Well, by the way they already call them, big and small. It's not level. If you say one is big and one is small, already you already know that. I think you also know that, well...
So what kind of campaign are they expecting first? Because, when you speak to some of this so-called in small, because, you have to be very careful when you call them small sometimes, they would say that, we're campaigning, we're doing door-to-door, we're on social media.
Yeah.
So
when they say they don't have level playing field, what exactly do they mean by that? I mean, I would like to hear that, because if you're saying they don't, buy center spread, they can't pay for center spread or pay for several coverages, it's optional. It's not sacrosanct in the electoral that you must pay for these types of above the line or below the line.
That's cuts. What they say. So we have to ask the papers, how they're reading the campaign not starting for this fringe party.
Even some of them that can tell you no. That is not our style.
That's not our strategy.
We want to adopt a different style. So you may come across as though they don't have what it takes. But they do, but they chose the other way. But they know already what they're doing.
Honestly, let's not kid ourselves.
They already say if you're big and you're small. It's clear enough, I guess. New notes, January 31 deadline, sacrosanct, CBN. Reassures on adequate supply to banks. And the CBN says, they're telling people that banks do have these new notes. But the question is, so if they have them, if this date is sacrosanct, why did they have to give them, January 13 to ensure that they comply wholly to all of that? Why didn't they just let them know that, listen, you have to comply from the get-go? And for those who didn't comply, it's inefficiency. Why are Nigerians now the ones to pay for all of those times lost? Because many went to the bank, went to the ATM, they didn't get it. While this deadline subsists, who's supposed to take the heat for that one? But anyways, that's New Telegraph today.
Nigerian News Direct is the one I have for you next, and look at this. Also riding on that story, remember we saw something, nobody can blackmail me, but this is an extension to the story. Corruption, 8 years in office. I have no square inch outside Nigeria, attributed to President Buhari.
Okay, well, let's keep going. Of course, the president will expect.
You want to contest that?
Well, the president will expect reactions to some of these things. So
that's what the president says. He has no square inch outside Nigeria. Says
so what, him, his family, what?
No, look,
just him, huh?
Chamberlain, stop lumping everybody together. He said him, please. Says willing to leave in country after office. You remember that interview that President Obasanjo had? Was it with Stephen Sacco, the BBC, and was asking him about corruption, and he was talking about his daughter, and the president asked him, "You want me to be responsible for a 45-year-old woman? So I'm going to ask you: you want the president to be responsible for his adult children? Is that what you're asking?"
Did I mention his daughter?
I'm just asking. Or are you asking him to be responsible for more than I don't know, but I can't forget that interview in a hurry. But the president for himself says, I have no square inch outside Nigeria, period. No addition, no subtraction. Says willing to live in country after office. Fighting corruption, not easy. Like military era, president admits. Prepare for the worst if you want to serve Nigeria, he says. urges migrants to consider staying back to build the nation together. So you find all of the details on page 2. Maybe he also mentioned his family there. You don't know. Page 2 will give you all of the details there. Look at this. Adeleke inaugurates 11-man committee to review conversion of OSCOED to Elisha Varsity. So you might want to look at that story as well. I know there was a time when almost all state governors were converting, institutions, colleges of education to universities. I don't know what the rationale was, but hey, it is what it is. A doctrine attack, insecurity not completely dealt with in Nigeria, attributed to Tinubu. And you have a number of other stories at the bottom and at the top, but hopefully what we've looked at is interesting enough to urge you to pick up a copy of the Nigerian News Direct.
When the president says this, you know how minutes are in people.
You are still mulling that headline.
Just thinking aloud. For instance, now, when the president has said this, he's telling people, you can go check, do whatever you want. This is what it is. So when we then try to go to look at the asset declaration form, why are those agencies just, doing more than sometimes you just wonder?
I don't understand.
The president has said nothing. Release my forms, do whatever you want, go check my forms if you can, but
if you want, it should be if you want, not if you can.
Many people want, but you can't even smell it. You can't even near the form. Who will give it to you? Where would you get it? You can never get it.
FYI. I think FYI, what's that? Freedom of FOI.
You know how many?
Freedom of Information.
You know how many FOIs several people have written? Ask Sarah. They'll tell you, we've done FOI. They're only telling us, look, FO out of this place. But, that is it with a look at some of the dailies here. We will be back in a moment. Stay with us.
The chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, arrives at the conference hall of the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, along with some INEC national commissioners. The INEC chairman is meeting with the acting director general of the NYSC to fine-tune arrangements for the participation of corps members in the forthcoming general elections.
We are here basically to thank you, the acting DG, and to thank the NYSC for your consistent support. The truth is that INEC can't conduct elections successfully without the NYSC. That's the truth.
Youth corps members form a big chunk of ad hoc staff for the electoral umpire during the conduct of elections, and INEC would be needing more of their services next month following the increased introduction of technology for the exercise.
The National Youth Corps members are our most reliable, most readily available, most educated, most patriotic, the largest number of election duty staff in the country. So we simply can't conduct elections without the support of the Youth Corps members. And this is very important, particularly now that we're introducing increasingly more and more technology in the conduct of elections.
While promising INEC of its continued support, the acting director general of the NYSC appeals to the electoral body to scale up the security and welfare of corps members who will participate in the elections.
We need to work in our present reality. There is need to look at review of the allowance paid to the corps members in view of the prevailing economic reality. Also on our part, we have directed all state coordinators to liaise with DSS and other security agencies to identify crisis-prone areas in the state and forward same to the headquarters.
It's less than 50 days to the 2023 general elections, which will commence with the presidential and National Assembly elections on February 25th. An exercise the electoral umpire is depending on corps members for its success.
Welcome back to Sunrise. We're kicking off with election matters, and yeah, you've seen the dailies yesterday, today, and it might be there for a while. You never know. Well, as you've seen there, Mr. Mike Igini joins us next. He's a former resident electoral commissioner for INEC in Akwa Ibom State. He joins us virtually. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program. Well, now all of us playing out about preparations for elections, and that narrative coming through from the commission. Yes, you've seen how people are responding to this one. So I know you have insight. You might have spoken to a couple of people there to actually understand the thinking, the rationale behind those narratives and how we are all internalizing it, externally. What is your thinking concerning that statement, if you could put them in context for us?
Well, thank you, Chamberlain, for having me. And good morning to Nigerians. Indeed, happy New Year, because it's my first engagement with channels this year, as part of our effort collectively to take the electoral ship to a safe harbor, a few weeks away from now. Now, with respect to the news that made the banner headlines across yesterday, the first thing I did was to read the reports. And clearly from the report that I read, the concern raised by the National Commissioner in an event is not actually, from what I read, a decision of INEC that the various tools that it has have indicated that the isolated cases of insecurity that we have been contending with are enough and sufficient to contemplate postponement of elections. So that is not a decision from INEC, and I stand to be corrected in hours or days ahead, because I know the commission will be having meeting with different stakeholders in terms of briefing. Of course, from your paper review this morning, you just told us that today the commission is going to present the register of voters to the public. So I am very sure that that will be very clarified, because the statement is actually a call to the security agencies to be up their game. Not necessarily that will be enough and sufficient to talk about postponement of election or whatever you call it, cancellation. Not at all. I don't see that. That's not the decision of the commission. And interestingly, from some of the report, it was as if the chairman that says so. I don't think so, because you read all the report, there is nothing like that. And in any case, we regrettably, a bad example is not a good example. But here we are in this country where over the years, it's 2003, 2007, which was actually the highest level when we have the kind of security challenges that we had, to the extent that a truck loaded with explosive was stationed, driven to INEC head office. It didn't stop the commission from holding an election. And in any case, security agencies across, from the much I know, having also participated at the IGP retreat for senior security officers across the country. The president was there, who made a very profound declaration as to what is expected of security. So my plea to media, that has been a very dependable and reliable ally. I'm talking about the mainstream media, not social media we have no control over, is that as we are moving toward this election, I want to appeal that statements made by officials of the commission should be further clarified, particularly if it's an opinion that has been expressed, which of course is a genuine one from this national commissioner itself. It's a genuine concern. But I would have been more comfortable if the media was able to place a call to the chairman or to Professor Sokoye, who have been the regular faces we see on television or engaging the Nigerian people, so that the way this aspect of whole postponement had been overstretched, quite frankly, is not the best that should happen at this point in time. Everybody should now be prepared for election. Because where we are now, Chamberlain, we should be talking about implementation strategies that we must look at on the part of INEC, on the part of voters, on the part of candidates, on the part of the security agency, particularly the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the media, the CSO. And based on my own experience, I think the course of this engagement, there are quite a number of areas of implementation strategy that we need to bring forward that all of us must be able to key in so that we can have a peaceful, successful election. Because the greatest promise of democracy is periodic election and peaceful transfer of power.
Well, yesterday we saw that the federal government responded, saying that the elections will hold. They're working with the security agencies, or ensuring that the security agencies do their work to ensure that the elections hold. But having a very pragmatic assessment, I know that you have said that even when the INEC office was attacked, elections held sometime in 2003. You cited it as a bad example. And I do know that my colleague also mentioned this yesterday, and the question I asked was, what sort of elections held? So the questions as to, what is the quality? It's not just about elections holding. What is the quality of elections that can hold if we continue to see this sort of attacks? We've seen a number of attacks on INEC offices. I know that INEC has been, very pragmatic and very responsive, saying that they would print whatever it was that was damaged in those places and ensure that elections hold. But looking at, taking a very pragmatic view of the security situation we're facing in some parts of the country, for instance, the southeast, where there's usually some concern, and also the destruction of some INEC offices. Hopefully we will not see any more within the next 45 days. But do you think that there are elements that are capable of stalling the elections, at least affecting the quality of the kind of election that is conducted?
Mark, thank you very much. I will say this here. On the basis of the processes and procedure that are in place to deal with historical challenges of election service delivery in our country, with respect also to the security issue we're talking about, I want to, on the basis of what I know that INEC has at the moment, INEC has what they call both a rational plan and an emergent plan. Whenever there is a sufficient threats to the process, even with the tool that it has deployed, which it has at the moment. Because how many people know at the moment in the country that INEC has at the headquarters, domiciled there, what we call Electoral Management Support Center, that has secretariats in the 36 states of the Federation, including the Federal Capital Territory, that gives the Commission what we call 360 visibility view of what happened across the country. In each state, and I think in one of our engagement, I provided a picture of some of those tools. We talk about the EOSC, Electoral Operations Support Center, that tracks everything that INEC does, from the head office, I'm talking about the state office, to the local government, to the RA, to the polling unit. And there's a reporting format on all risks that are attended to issue of elections. That INEC has at the moment. Now, talking about the quality of election, look, let me be clear here. At the moment, the system that have been designed, if we are able to create an enabling environment, which is the focus we are talking about now, Mark, where I can tell you that I have never been as optimistic about tomorrow on account of the challenges we're having today, based on what I know that many Nigerians have come to attest to, that you now have a system, a legal framework. I will thank the National Assembly for what they have done. We also thank the President and, of course, the civil society for the huge work they did, and of course the media in having the 2022 Act in place. Where we are now, we should be focusing on key issues because we already have legal framework, we have a system in place that will deal with the issue about the quality of election. For instance, at the moment where we are, Nigerians should be focusing and engaging on the commission on recruitment of ad hoc staff. Dealing with the issue about infiltration, how do we deal with that? Now, even when people try to infiltrate the process, would they be able to succeed with that? Mark, where the answer is no. The process has been designed in a way and manner that any effort, attempt to want to manipulate the process, you will not succeed, but the evidence of your effort will be so overwhelming, such that at the end of the day, you will gain nothing. And that takes me to the issue about what you hear every day. People collecting PVC, people harvesting details of PVC, which they are doing at the moment. Of course, the issue about preloading, there is nothing like preloading anymore. In any case, the preloading they are referring to was the period of the car reader, where people just merely have warehouse PVC, swipe them. That does not mean that it has been accredited. And of course, with the provision of Section 49, Section 53, that deals with total number of registered voters. Today, we no longer talk about total number of registered voters. At the end of the election, Mark, a new register will be produced at the polling unit. Now, that has dealt with that. So, issue about preloading, collection of PVC, it will amount to nothing. What is going on is that some ICT experts, and of course, I cannot rule out from within our own system, who are giving fake information to politicians and making money from them, that you can preload, you can harvest details of PVC, it will amount to nothing. All of this we are talking about, Mark, in the 105 elections that have been conducted, none, all of these things, they try to do them, they all fail woefully. So where we are right now, it is for people to go and collect your PVC, the beavers will be used, no more incident form, all right? Then the issue about hacking, oh, they are going to hack, do this and all of that.
So we will get to those issues. We will get to those issues. We're still dealing largely with the issue of security. And as you know, I mean, as INEC itself continues to emphasize, you know, elections are a multi-stakeholder affair. For its own part, internally, etc., the things that are within its control, I'm sure that it is doing its best, you know, in that regard to safeguard the process. But the things that are outside of its control, for instance, such as security, which is the fear that the INEC National Commissioner was expressing yesterday or 2 days ago. There are questions as to, you know, the things that are outside of his control. Do you think that there has been sufficient will? Because citing examples, in 2015, we saw that the Northeast, for instance, there were questions as to, you know, whether all of Nigeria's territory was within its control in 2015. And we saw that the federal government, you know, I think there was some conversation between the federal government and INEC, and they had to move the election so that there could be clearance operations in the Northeast at that time. Do you think that there is anywhere right now where INEC has concerns that they should be raising with the federal government to say, look, if we do not conduct elections in these areas, the outcome could substantially affect the results of the elections that we see in the general elections, and they need to do something about those areas as soon as possible? Are there areas like that?
Mark, at the moment, even the official of the commission that was referenced, he spoke generally. He didn't specify any particular area where it would be impossible to conduct election. Two, INEC as a body and the security agency, I am aware that, which is of course the normal practice, to do what we call the mapping of areas, what they call flashpoints. All those areas that have been mapped are already there. Two, I know that 48 hours to the election, 24 hours to the elections, there are measures that will be taken, and indeed on election day. But at the moment, the point being made is that the genuine concern, which of course we all know, that around the country, there have been areas of concern, attack on INEC offices. And I told you that, look, with respect to attack on INEC offices, we are only losing resources because we have to replace, INEC have to replace those material that have been destroyed, generator, cubicle, and all of that. But that all of those things that are happening, they have always happened before, but INEC has always recovered. For instance, to drive home this point, after we can move away from this and let us focus on key issue, and that is that who would have thought that INEC would be able to conduct election in Anambra State, given the kind of security challenge that was going on before the governorship election in Anambra State. But at the right time, everybody working together, particularly the security, and they did very well, were able to conduct Anambra election. I am saying my optimism is based on the fact that, yes, there are concerns of security, which those who are saddled with that responsibility should deal with. I think that is the point really that should be emphasized from what the National Commissioner spoke about, and not necessarily about, the thought of postponement, which is more people are dwelling on. I am saying that, look, we've got to be careful, because we cannot have a country where we tell the entire world that we have no national character. We fix election for 25th of February and March respectively, because of isolated cases, which are not enough and sufficient, even though consigning will not lead to postponement of election. In the days ahead, hours ahead, I am very sure, because up to this moment, Mark, we have not heard from the commission on this subject matter. What we're discussing is just, is genuine concern by an official of the commission, which of course have been stretched to the point of serious worry for Nigeria.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Egini, but the hope was that INEC would have spoken up, the commission would have spoken up much earlier than this, particularly when Mr. President said, I think in November, that INEC has no excuse not to be ready for the elections. But let's progress in the conversation as we look at issues having to do with recruitment, speaking of which CSOs and opposition parties have expressed concern that the INEC portal was open and that it shouldn't have been announced because it would be open to all manner of partisan people who would infiltrate the commission seeking employment as ad hoc staff. What are your thoughts on this? I know you have clarified with us in the past that RATECs, as registered area technicians, cannot be used to compromise the elections. But is this worry now about the opening of the portal in any way related to the fears about the use of RATECs to compromise the elections?
Well, thank you. Let us now please understand the nature of ad hoc staff to be recruited and the source where they come from. At the moment, INEC has a total of 176,846 polling units. These polling units are the most critical point where the will of the people that must govern, that must be counted and taken into account, will take place. Interestingly, the good news is that all those who will man the polling units are drawn from the NYSC, are taken from NYSC. Don't forget that the current system have taken power to the people at the polling unit, where election will be won and lost, and no longer at work collation center, local government, or other levels of collation. So at that level, that has been well taken care of. And of course, from the beginning of this program, you show the picture of the commission chairman having meeting with the NYSC. Now, the only area of concern, which of course the NYSC authority know very well, is that from my own experience, in one of the states I went to intervene in an election, sometime in 2012, what politicians used to do, of course that is in the past now, was that those who are passed out of NYSC, they use their badge number, their names, and infiltrate recruitment process, such that on election day, the people you will find at the polling unit are actually those who are not NYSC members. And of course, they saw fake uniform from them, NYSC uniform. But that has been dealt with. But we must be vigilant. And that is why the current procedure now is that the DG of NYSC will personally, certify the list of NYSC to be sent to the commission down to the state level. So at the polling unit level, that is covered. Now, at the level of what we call War Collation Center, at the moment, INEC have also now working what they call states, federal agencies. And what do they do? What we do is to ensure that rather than have a list from any federal agency because of past infiltration, what is required is that every agency that is forwarding names must come with what we call the nominal roll. In fact, in some jurisdiction where I have worked, I demand for your last pay slip in addition to what we call the nominal roll. So we don't have much fear about that. Now, with respect to those from the university community we'll be bringing on board, one of the issues we never had before was how a professor, a collation officer, returning officer will appear, disappear, and make a return, some of who succeeded. Today, Section 65 of the Act had made it impossible for any declaration that is not consistent with the provision of the Act or with what happened at the polling unit, particularly having regard to what happened now at the level of collation process, which is now dual, both public and the hard copy given to everybody.
Mr. Egini, please clarify that the RATEX are not ad hoc staff and have not been recruited in recent times.
Yeah. Now, what I'm only offering is my own past experience of what obtains, and I don't think that has changed. With respect to the current recruitment, I never will be able to speak to that. But the RATEX, very important set of people. Now, the RATEX appear to now be the target of politicians. They tried to do that in the last election that I presided over, where they would try to bribe them with dollars, many of whom came and report to my office. But of course, did they succeed? They failed because the way the system had been designed, it had been done in such a way that, before now, you used to hear about EOs, resident commissioner. Today, I can confirm to you here that the chairman of INEC, the national commissioner, the REC, electoral officers, they cannot sign one document on election day. They cannot help anybody at the moment. And that is why it's unnecessary for people going after the chairman, dragging his attention everywhere from one court to the other. What can he do? In fact, if you remove this set of commissioners you have in the place now, and you bring a new set of people under the current system, there's nothing that they can do anymore.
So the results...
So the RATEX I'm trying to drive to here are the people what we call who will be at the War Collation Center when they are going to do collation with the collation officer to ensure that what has been uploaded to the IREF as well as the central server is consistent with the hard copy that a presiding officer is bringing to the War Collation Center. That is the job of the RATEC. Now, the politicians believe that RATEC could be used to change what has happened at the polling unit. That will not happen. Politicians, please.
All right, Mr. Egini.
From what we'll be telling people.
Mr. Egini, you keep telling us that will not happen because of that game-changing content in the Electoral Act. We hope that, one of us will just chance upon that content and find out what exactly it is you've been telling us all this while. We must take a break now for some messages. We'll be right back to continue this conversation. Stay with us. Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We also have Mr. Mike Egini, former resident electoral commissioner, INEC in Akwa Ibom State. Thank you, Mr. Egini, for holding on. We've been looking at the 2023 elections, particularly concerns about INEC that the elections may not hold in certain parts and other related issues. Mr. Egini, as we now progress with the conversation, I'd like us to talk about the cases, the outstanding cases in court yet to be determined, the candidacy of most people aspiring for positions, and with 45 days to the elections, what does this portend?
Thank you very much. Again, that's why I said that a call for stakeholders to play their own role will not be enough and sufficient to talk about postponement. As we speak, what is very clear is that presidential candidates, there are no problem with them. We don't have any litigation with respect to that. But regrettably and shamefully, I must say, that with respect to governorship, senatorial, House of Rep, State House of Assembly, a huge number of those who will be candidates, regrettably, will not be known before the election. But that will not stop the election from holding, because what you have, what we are going to fall back on, will be the logo of the party, because candidates' pictures don't appear on the ballot, but the logo of the respective political party. But how did we come to this level? That we have got to a level which is a fundamental regression, that for 45 days to election, we are not seeing campaigns by governorship candidates. We are not seeing campaign showing to Nigeria what they call legislative agenda by those going to the House of Assembly. The national level and state level is very shameful. This is because of the refusal of the political class to adhere to the current legal regime as it relates to party primaries. So here we are, because most of these cases, they will have to travel down to the Supreme Court of Nigeria. But here we are, they are not there. So election will go on irrespective of this, because it has happened before. Remember that in some off-season election we conducted, the candidate will never know before the election. Is that a good thing? Certainly not. But we actually have to go, election must go on. So what we should be doing right now for the presidential candidate, where we are more settled in terms of not having issue, is that they should go and set up their situation room right now. Set up the situation room, have your party agent. The party agent submission process is still ongoing from what I read in the papers. All right? Parties have not completed that. They should go and do that right now. But I must inform here that under the current system, the president, the vice president, minister, the governor, deputy governor, commissioners, chairmen of local government and councillors who have not resigned from office by virtue of Section 43 of the Act are not qualified to be party agents because of the fact that their presence in those areas will have implication. So, but if they want to do so, they must resign 30 days or 3 months to election. As of today, if any of those categories of persons have submitted their names through the portal to INEC, my humble advice is that they should go and withdraw those names because they will not be allowed to be party agents. In any case, it should be noted that INEC as the umpire is an agent to all those who are going for election. But I think that Section 43, they should take note of that. Similarly, with respect to this security, where we are now, Bukola, it is a stage where the security agencies really have to stand tall and mighty in defense of our democracy and the rule of law. This is so because election is the only period when the commitments of personnel of security agencies that are key in providing the enabling environment will be tested. This is where the commander-in-chief will have to come in. Where we are now, we should be focusing on implementation strategy. So therefore, I will encourage Mr. President, who have made profound commitment, all the statements he have made at Owerri in various event that he had participated, he had made it very clear that the security agencies must be apolitical, they must be fair, they must be loyal to democratic values. And we're able to do so, to call them now to do the following. One, they must present to Mr. President their specific strategies to deal with thuggery. Two, all the areas that have been mapped of concern, he has to do so. They must tell the president what specific measure they want to take. Number three, on vote buying, we don't need to go and look for other level of security to deal with that. All those who are going to be deployed to polling units, we should be the one that will be responsible for ensuring that those who want to buy vote are stopped from doing so. Therefore, they will be held accountable. In fact, dismissal to be awaiting a police officer, security personnel in whose presence this devaluation of the ballot is allowed to take place. Number four, and that is that 48 hours to the election, 24 hours to the election, there are specific measures which I don't want to engage on in public here that the security know they will do. And in fact, the one of 24 hours to election and that of election day will be led by Mr. President as a good example and in line with the commitment that he has shown so far.
Well, Mr. Guinea, I mean, those visuals we were showing earlier on was from the governorship election in Ekiti State. And I mean, I'm sure you must have seen maybe a policeman walking past where the ballot box was placed. But just a few meters from there, literally few meters, not up to maybe 5 or 6 meters, there were people converging and engaging in, the usual roll call, trying to have a register who voted for who so that it can be sorted. We got visuals of that because I was on scene that day. We got visuals. Eventually, we tried to disperse them. It was because journalists moved to them that it dispersed, not because the security personnel who were actually close by moved towards them. So these things happen, and I wonder what will then need to change, because you'll hear some of them saying, well, we're not bearing arms, we're just meant to monitor and see things going well and maybe try to enforce as little as we can. So just how enforceable is that? Because in reality, we have seen that some of them just say, well, we can't tell what they're doing. People are just converging. We can't automatically say they're buying votes. So I wonder then how this will be different. And another issue really is when you talked about, agents, party agents who should have resigned 3 months before the elections, meaning that if they have not resigned yet, there's no show for them, literally. But I do hope, again, that INEC will be the one to really enforce this, because when the voter register was published and people started raising issues saying, well, this clearly doesn't look like an 18-year-old, this looks like maybe a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old or what have you. INEC said, well, Nigerians should help us to identify these people. So I hope this will not also be a case of INEC asking Nigerians to help them identify which of these agents have not resigned. Maybe from your past experience, do you think INEC is able to do that on its own, or it will also be relying on the help of Nigerians?
Yes, thank you, Kayode. Election management is a multi-stakeholder responsibility, and the issue you are talking about is squarely on that of security. Now, I am aware that there is going to be a new operational order, which we've been using before, but now it's going to be used nationwide. The operational order is to the extent that now the security personnel, of course, it's a mission led by the Nigerian police that will be deployed to the polling units. The IG of police, the commissioner of police, INEC chairman, the REC at all levels, they will have access to whoever that is deployed to a polling unit. Now, every one of them deployed to a polling unit will be charged to take that responsibility, because the moment you enter the polling unit, you are not allowed to use that is, once you enter the polling unit, you have been accredited, you have been issued a ballot paper, you move to the cubicle where you are going to make a choice. You are not expected to use your telephone. As a matter of fact, those who are willing to part away with their telephone within this radius, I'm talking about within the radius, because they need their phone after they have voted. But when you are going to vote, it means that you are ready to lose your phone. Security people are going to be specifically directed to ensure that vote buying, trying to show to people who you voted for, is not allowed. That is a responsibility that must be discharged. When I said earlier that refer to the media as a dependable ally, we cannot quantify what you guys have done in terms of helping to expose. The instance you mentioned, it was not the security that helped. It was the media. And that's to tell you the power of the media. We will encourage you to do that. As a matter of fact, as part of your credit, the people's right to know. It is one of the things we expect that should be done in this election. And so, for party agents, they still have the window. If you know that any political party, of course, this is usually a problem of the party in office at all levels. If at the moment you submitted the name of a commissioner, of a councillor, of a local government chairman, hoping that on that day he can use his visibility to go around the polling unit, of course, you should go and make a change now, because you will not have such representation at the polling unit. But in any case, whether you have a party agent, you don't have a party agent, it is the duty of INEC to record what transpired there, and deliver it as it ought to be. But because we are operating an environment of distrust, we do not trust ourselves. In fact, basically, we are in a state of anomaly, because some of those people who were actually arrested should have been dealt with now. Now, on the last issue you raised about the fact that pictures have been, there are several pictures that have been seen on television. Now, this is one, and I need to explain to Nigerians what they try to achieve here. Now, if you look at what I'm showing to you here, it has been in the social media for the past few days. And I need to explain to Nigerians to say, look, all of these things are the past shenanigans of politicians. If you look at the picture that I'm showing here, this is clearly somebody about 6 years old or 5 years old. Now, on election day, no matter how shameless the parent of this child, no matter how shameless members of that community, it is not possible that you will see such a little boy on the polling unit queue up on election day. But in the past, this is where we are departed from. You see, we have left Egypt. Some people are still there. Now, in the past, what happened was that they needed as many ineligible persons like this to be on the register. So that, by virtue of section 53, we talk about total number of registered voters. If you sex up the register of voters, you have room to maneuver. You have room to do thumb printing. That was why, in a polling unit, for instance, where you have as many of this kind of persons on the register, what now happened was that if at the end of the poll, it was actually only 100 people that came on that day. And thereafter, there was now a different result under the old order, the old regime, not where we are at the moment. What now happened was that when you go to tribunal, the law, the court will say that, look, you cannot talk about overvoting, because, INEC argument will be that on the basis of the actual people who came, you only have just only 100 people. How come the result had changed? This is an overvoting. The law, the position of the law was that overvoting was based on total number of registered voters, in which case you still have extra 400. But Kayode, the law has changed. Right now, we are now having what we call the total voting is now based on total number of accredited persons, those who actually came on that day.
Right.
This is the biggest blow to election rigging in Nigeria. So those, and that's why I've been telling people that, look, all you are doing, of course, I have another picture here showing somebody who was buying PVC. This is somebody who is buying PVC from people. What is the implication of what he's doing here? He is going to disenfranchise these people. This is exactly what he's doing. You see, if we are not in a lawless society, if you are not in a society where the rule of law is no longer material, but the rule of men, these individuals that have been identified to have now been arrested and prosecuted because a PVC is a property of INEC. It does not belong even to the citizen. You are a mere holder.
Well, the question, Mr. Guinea, will be, the question naturally will be
to close on that,
right.
It is that those who refuse to learn, those who refuse to heed to the messaging of INEC, that we are moving away from that. It means that they are going to die of ignorance. Even when they are supposed to drink from the well of knowledge, they will definitely going to suffer the dinosaur experience in the desert of ignorance.
Well, trust Mr. Guinea to put in some of these expressions. But the example you just gave, really, yes, you've painted a bright picture about the coming elections off the back of the Electoral Act, but you just said that the PVC is a property of INEC. And I imagine if my property was stolen or at least something untoward happened to my property, I would stay on it, go to report and ensure that the police gets me my property back, or at least gets me some sort of, resolution regarding that. So if INEC's property is being abused, is being traded illegally and all of that, then the responsibility lies at the table of INEC to ensure that its property is not treated in such manner. Yes, the security agencies have to do that, but isn't it the responsibility of INEC to start the process such that it can stay on security agencies to either arrest, because that's their primary responsibility, arrest, prosecute, and ensure that this serves as a lesson? So isn't INEC dropping the ball there?
No, Kayode, you see, INEC cannot be involved in so many of these things and all that. I mean, security agency, before INEC laws, we all have laws in this country that deals with matters like this. I mean, you showed video of those who were arrested by security agencies. We've not seen them tried. This is why in this country now people believe that they can do anything and get away with it. It's very sad. Today, as we speak, a professor has been convicted. Another one is going to be in court tomorrow. We have been in court over 2019 matter. Look at the matter is being dragged in court. The second professor who falsified results. Right now, INEC is focusing on how to deliver on this election. You could see what is going on now, the distraction going on with the chairman, having to be talking to his lawyers when he's being distracted. From High Court in Abia, they went to the High Court, Court of Appeal in Owerri. They're the last one in Abuja. What kind of society are we? Secretary should take up some of these matters. It's so sad.
Well, I know the last pronouncement.
I call on Mr. President here. I need to call on Mr. President here. Now look, under your leadership, this INEC, so much innovations have come up that will be written in the history book that under your watch, this thing happened. But where we are now, Mr. President, your greatest legacy will be the outcome of the forthcoming elections.
Well, he has said that time and again as well.
Has implication
right
for the future of this country.
Mr. Guinea, lots of things to touch on.
President need to be very strong.
Right.
So
lots of issues to touch on.
Quickly,
I'd like you to speak to this. I think it came up briefly earlier on. And it's people reporting that they're not getting access to collect their PVCs. In fact, one of the dailies had it right there on the front page. It's the biggest story that people are being denied access, or at least collection of their PVCs. And we've seen this time and again. I'm sure you've seen some of the reports. For a person who is experiencing that, who has gone through that and really doesn't know what to do, because it's expected that it's their property as well, they should be able to access it. What should they do?
Right now, I have been getting such, people have called me. I'm no longer in INEC.
But you have institutional memory, as they say.
Because of my votary.
Right.
For the right thing to be done for the good of our country. Because, Kayode, I've never been as optimistic as before on account of what I see. That I can see a new day for Nigerian people. So with respect to the PVC, I've had to call some areas where I've got complaints to say, look, this is what I'm hearing. I see some of this video, I forward to them. They try to give explanation that is not exactly true, and so on and so forth. So what I'm asking Nigerians to do is this. Any office that you go to, where you have been denied, make a recording of that and try and forward it. Put it on social media. Let everybody see that this particular office, this is what has been done to you. At the moment, I understand that at the level of the local government, it was far from where people domicile. It has been devolved to the ward level. The report we're also getting from folks who are either relative or friends has been quite encouraging. But that is not to say that we don't get this report. And of course, it is INEC to issue sufficient warning to our staff. Wherever such things are been alleged, if found out, such staff should be proceeded against. That has only been my recommendation. If you try that within my jurisdiction, there will be consequences. Deviation from ethical standard, there will be consequences. Because we are expected to work and treat Nigerian people respectfully in giving them their PVC.
And that is where the fear for some people comes. People who then imagine what will happen on elections. 70,000 polling units. Does INEC really have enough eyes to monitor what will go on that day?
Kayode, thank you very much. I just told you that INEC has so innovated. In fact, it's the most, it's one institution I can tell you that has so innovated, developed robust tools to deal with historical challenges of election service delivery in our country. INEC have developed what you call, I just mentioned to you, the EMSC, Election Management Support Center, dealing with the EMS, Election Management System. INEC have some tools. Two of those tools are one, the Electoral Risk Management Tool and the EOSC. In one of our programs, I showed to you that everything is now being tracked from INEC office. And that was why in Akwa Ibom, for instance, in the last election, some characters, they were kidnapping INEC staff at about 12 midnight, carrying ballot papers. I was right in the office. The team, the leader of the team from Abuja with the state have been trained to track the entire 31 local government. They didn't know. They thought we were joking. So when I placed a call, they were saying that we're using magic. There is no magic. INEC has developed tools. Let me restate the point I've always made before now. And that is that the people of Nigeria, this is the first and a very unique opportunity for you. Because the definition of democracy, government of the people, by the people, is what informed this innovation. At the moment, on election day, people are going to troop to the polling unit. Kayode, there's nobody who can stop a voter from voting on that day, other than activities of extra constitutional actors. That's the job of the police. Media men, INEC officials are not trained on how to disarm armed thugs. Those are the responsibility of
Mr. Guinea, let's wind down with this. Now, incidentally, you speak about no one can stop the voter. But what happens, because this is the first time we're going to be deploying beavers across the country for general elections, haven't used them in some states. So the experience will definitely be different. Yes, they've said they're training the personnel to ensure that things work. They've spoken about the safety measures, the alternative plans, but there may still be scenarios wherein, for instance, INEC officials could be alongside ad hoc staff or the voting officials, and it turns out that the beavers can't read either the fingerprints or the pupils or eyes of the person, and then there's no incident form. That's history. And what happens if they are there with a large crowd of people who probably then become very upset and insist that they want to vote? I don't know if INEC does scenario planning or SWOT analysis or those kind of scenarios. So what happens if those people perhaps or probably get angry, this mob action, they want to insist that they must vote when beavers don't work. Has INEC, do you think that that scenario has been envisaged by the Commission, and what may happen or what should happen in that kind of case?
First, the first question. Deployment of beavers across the country is not a problem. As a matter of fact, from the news, the entire full complement of the beavers, first, 76,846 beavers for each of the polling ready. Then they also have contingency that is already in place. So just the way Carrier was deployed is same thing that beavers will also be deployed. Now, with respect to the unlikely, I use the word unlikely, event that very unlikely, because we don't find that as a common thing, as something reported before, that a would-be voter have an issue about accreditation, which of course we have not recorded with respect to the 105 off-season and governorship elections that have been conducted. Look, at the moment, there are about 5 ways beyond the fingers confirmation that at least out of the 10, 1 should be able to do that. But in the unlikely event that out of the 10 you are not able to get that confirmed, what about your face? That has never failed. And in any case, they can use your VIN number, they can use your surname, all right? They can also use what you call the QR and the barcode. Look, Chamberlain, that is not a problem at the moment. Where we are right now, that we have a law. Where we are now, we have a system, we have a procedure. The area of concern is the one that we now need to have an enabling environment for that to happen. Interestingly, that's within the domain of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. And so far, so good. Security have also demonstrated that, in fact, the last set of elections that were conducted under the current Inspector General of Police have shown eloquently that as a people, we have the capacity. What we must avoid is self-doubt. The system that is in place has brought tremendous energy of hope, of integrity, of credibility that is unequal in our electoral history. I see a new day for the Nigerian people. All of you, you must come out on election day. Election day, nobody go to INEC office, nobody go to political party office. All road leads to polling unit. That is where you are going to exercise your franchise. I'm so happy that I see Nigerians attaching value to the permanent voters card to change who they want to be leader in our country. That is the only way we can build a society when there will be opportunity for all and responsibility from all.
A very good place to let it go. Mr. Mike Igini, former resident electoral commissioner for Akwa Ibom State, thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you.
All right, we will be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, Hamza Lawal joins us next. He is the Chief Executive of Connected Development and Follow the Money. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having
me. Happy New Year to you
as well. Happy 2023, Malco and Chamberlain.
Yeah, so you had this campaign about stopping people from selling their votes, because we've seen several images of people brazenly buying PVCs. It sounded unbelievable because of what information is out there about beavers, how it will function, how they don't need to sell their PVCs, and how useless it will be even if you do. But that still happens in many cases, as you know, it turns out. Now, vote buying is one component that, in spite of all that's going on, if they don't address that part, it may just hugely impact on the quality of the elections. Now, there's this scenario, several people think, look, no matter what happens, you may likely see that here. How do will people have that to resist if they up the amount of money they give them to sell their votes? So are you optimistic that this will happen? Because, I mean, in some cases, you actually gave them money so as not to sell their vote. But we know 45 days to election, that money would have been spent. And so on the election day, the dynamics will be different.
I'm optimistic that what civil society and the government, particularly anti-corruption agency and fiscal agencies are doing would help curb these transactional elections. You know, it is really sad and unfortunate. And let's not forget that it started with the political party primaries. And they set precedent as we go into 2023 elections. But like you've rightly said, you know, politicians don't have to buy PVC. Because if you buy it, it's just worthless. But I can also understand why they're buying it. Because when you want to walk around voter suppression, particularly targeting the stronghold of your opposition, the best format, which is against the law and it's a criminal offense, is to go and, you know, buy their PVC and hoard it and not release it so that the vote from that side would make you win elections. You know, but if you look at government policy, particularly around the fact that now there is a limitation of how much you can withdraw and the redesign of the Naira, even if it has its own issues, but at least it would help. And just recently, the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit is saying we're going to block some government accounts before the elections and we'll make sure we monitor how monies are moving in and out of this account. I believe this would help. But what this also tells us is we've lost our value, not only as a society, but also our electoral values and what our PVC stands for. And that's why I'm excited about the campaign Yes Project is doing around, you know, value your votes. And we're telling people that in the eyes of the permanent voters card, this is the only thing that ensures equity. Because President Muhammadu Buhari, you and I have just one vote. So it is this system that ensures justice, fairness, and equity. And we're saying value this process and system so that you can take ownership of your democracy and, most importantly, of what becomes of your future. So do not see election in 2023 as a transaction. Do not see it as a fun fair. Because, see, a lot of politicians go to these communities during their campaign and they go with you know, items that they used to induce voters: wrapper, rice, groundnut oil, salt, Maggi. For some people who are listening, they might think this is alien, but this is the reality. And for us, you know, deploying USAB, we've already started observing the election. See, election observation does not start on the day of election. For us, it starts weeks before the election and even after the elections. Because when you look at issues that affects the election, and some of which are fake news, hate speech, which triggers violence. So violence does not just erupt. There are precedents. There are some elements that triggers what becomes of violence. And usually it is just after the results are trickling down. So for us, we've already deployed, you know, manpower on the field. They're sending in reports and we're monitoring the trends and doing our analysis of what are the impacts of what politicians are saying. Yeah. What are the impacts of their actions on the ground? How are they inducing voters? How are money trying to exchange hands? What can anti-corruption agencies like ICPC and EFCC are doing? How can we better regulate fiscal responsibility and tackle these heads on?
Essentially, they're following the money. They're following still following the money, as you always say, and I think you're wearing a T-shirt to emphasize that as well. But I'm curious, when you started this campaign, because this is a campaign of sorts as well. There's a political campaign of a different kind, but this time around targeted at the voter. What has the response been? How has this been accepted? Have you had people who have said, these are my challenges, this is why I would have done this, but I wouldn't do this now? Do you have those kind of scenarios?
Oh, yes, we do. And I'll try, you know, to be blunt as possible and giving real feedback of what we got. Because first, when we launched this campaign, I flagged it off as a door-to-door, house-to-house campaign. We started first with getting people to go and get registered. And then when INEC announced that the PVCs are ready, we also started the campaign that go and collect your PVC. Today, you have over 30% unemployment rate. So a lot of people will tell me that, see, I've been out of a job. Those that even had their jobs during COVID-19, they lost their jobs. And they say, see, you think 5,000 or 10,000 naira is small. Well, it has a long way to fend for my immediate needs, that of me and my family. You know, and let's not shy away from reality. We have over 100 million people that are very poor. Maybe I should break this down. We have 100 million people that cannot guarantee 300 naira daily. So what this means is they don't even know where their next meal will come from. God forbid they have health challenge. It means that they're literally going to die. You know, schools have just resumed. People are saying, we can't even pay for our children's school fees. So now you're seeing people taking their kids from private school that they could afford before now into public schools. You know, that their infrastructures are dilapidated. So these are the realities we're seeing on the ground. Even if we try to make a case and say, see, you know, this is about life and death. I tell people 2023 is about life and death. It determines if you get a job, how much you're being taxed, how much you're being paid as a salary or wages, you know, how much it would go into infrastructure and being part of this process that determine our political history. But then they look at me and they shake their head and say, that's, you know, you're in a bubble. You're speaking on a bubble. This is our current reality and challenge. And for us, this money goes a long way, even if it will finish, you know, in less than a week or so. But also, let's even reflect back to the conditional cash payment.
Transfer.
No, I call it payment, because if it's transfer, it will move from one account to another. But it's payment because it's cash, handed cash. I was in Anambra State at one point. A grandmother who is close to 70-year-old brought a Ghana must go on the first day to collect 5,000 naira. Because she thought it was going to be a lot of money. That the last time she actually saw 200 naira notes was years ago. So she thought she was going to collect 100 naira into 5,000. So she came with a Ghana must go. As it sounds funny, that's the reality of some people. The people who have not tested any form of protein, that's meat, fish, bomo, in the past 2 years in their house. So these are the realities we're facing. It is really sad that politicians are now weaponizing poverty and then cashing in on it. But as a society, as civil society, as traditional institution, religious body, the media, we must form some sort of alliance and sell the same message. And our message must be embedded with vision and hope. So that it can get better, and it will get better if we get it right as a society.
If that is the situation, when you hear this sort of stories, when you now begin to explain what a vote, the power that a vote carries, do you see a change of attitude? Do you see a reflection that perhaps, you know, we could bear the immediate hunger for the long term?
Yes. I remember the campaign in Nasarawa State, after sitting down with a group of women, because our target are women and young people, because these are the bulk voters. You know, I remember when a grandmother, after, you know, I took her through the value of her votes and the power that she yields, and even explaining to her that these big men you see once in 4 years, why do we have to wait till once in 4 years? Why can't you see them, and why are they not organizing town hall meetings? You know, I made reference to so many other things and how it affects to their dilapidated road. And this woman said, you know, even if they give her 100 million naira, she would not sell her vote. And it made her proud. And she's now an ambassador who uses local language to talk to other women that belong to their age grade and the various meetings that they belong to. It was in that change and shift. But I would also confess, it is really slow. You know, it is really slow to do it on a large scale and reach millions of people. So that's why the media is key here. You know, how can the media help amplify this and simplify it in a way that people that do not even know how to read or write understand this message and embodies this message and become an advocate for that change we want to see.
Let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos on this one. Go ahead, guys.
Well, thanks, Jibalin. Hamzat, quite interesting, really, the conversation around the power of the votes and vote buying particularly. And, you know, in terms of following the money, I'm not sure if this is also another way to go about it. I mean, following the money in the political parties, how the political parties spend. I was just looking through some of the information put out there by political parties from time to time. Most of the things you see is about the next campaign venue, you know, vote for us. But there's never really that talk about this is how much we have spent, just some sort of transparency. I mean, we had the presidential candidate of, I think, AAC yesterday, and incidentally, he's one that puts it out from time to time that this is how much we spend for December. Don't you think that's another way to also follow the money, such that Nigerians can look at how much these parties spent last month, this month, and be able to tell really what these monies are used for? Maybe it will be easier to even tell who is planning to buy votes, who has deployed some sort of funds to buy votes. Isn't that another way to follow the money for you?
Yes, I totally agree. See, because before you follow the money, you need information, and this is what we call data. I need disaggregated data. And yes, we've asked these political parties, and particularly their candidates, declare your asset publicly, disclose your asset. Because you say you want to manage the hems of affair of Nigeria. What are you worth? How much do you have? What assets do you have? Disclose it. And this would actually tell the Nigerian people, and particularly the electorate, that, oh, this is the kind of government we would have. No political party, or when I say no political party, I'm talking about some of this so-called major political party. Yes, AAC, that's Showore. Showore always give a breakdown of how much income and expenditure he has or has expended. And this is a good precedent. This is some example we're hoping that other political parties would embody. And Showore has also publicly declared his asset. So why can't we have, Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso? Why can't we have Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and other presidential candidates? Why can't they declare their asset? And why can't we have their political parties tell us how much money are you mobilizing? How are you spending this money? And what is the value of this money you're spending to your campaign? I know that by law, they're meant to publish or submit their financial report to INEC. And I think maybe INEC needs to go a step further. When they publish this report, let it be made public. And then we'll know if they're overspending, because by law also there's a limit of what you can spend in a campaign for all the candidates and offices.
Right. I came across, just on a lighter note, I came across a video of a preacher speaking to the congregation and saying, may your child be like the presidential candidate you're voting for. And literally everywhere was silent. And, it just raised lots of conversation around that. And I wonder if that can also be some sort of prerequisite for voters, really, to decide who to vote for. Because I think you can expect what a man will do based on what he has done. So if we're not seeing a lot of transparency from the political parties, from the candidates, how much of transparency and accountability can we expect when they get into government? So can that also be a prerequisite to selecting who to vote for in the coming elections?
Oh, yes. Transparency and accountability must be at the center of how we decide or what informs who we cast our ballot on. Because if these people first are not even accountable to themselves, how do you think they will be accountable to you and I, and transparent on how they utilize Nigeria's vast resources? So yes, it should be at the center of how we decide. And now is the time for them to actually show that they're transparent and they would be accountable to you and I. Because see, it's just as if each and every one of them who is contesting for the office of the president and other public office are now seeking for jobs. And they're sharing their manifesto as their CV to say, vote me into office. But if you can't, set that precedent and say, you know what, I will be transparent and accountable. This is how I will be transparent now and accountable to you now, and even when I get to public office. Because really what they're doing and how they're sharing knowledge and information, particularly around the funds they're utilizing, it's not, it's not inspiring. It doesn't tell well about what the future holds.
Speaking of what the future holds, let's look at the immediate future, which is a few weeks from now, the elections. Kadi was talking about a video. I saw a video just moments ago of a potential voter who's already been induced with quite a number of items by a political party. And what was the requirement? Just let's have your PVC. But the voter goes on to say that, this is not going to last me more than a day or two, and I'm still going to vote my conscience. So it would seem as if, the work for you is already being done, but then again, do you anticipate that because of the awareness that is already being created amongst voters, by their present conditions, that vote buying may be significantly reduced in the coming elections, and the harvesting of information from PVCs that politicians are embarking on right now, how much damage also relatedly will that do to the polls?
I'm optimistic and I'm confident that there will be less vote buying and vote selling as we go into the 2023 election because of the various work that have and investment by media, civil society, as we go into this election. I'm optimistic that we would have less vote buying and vote selling during the elections. And yes, we've seen a case where people would say, yes, we're collecting these items, but we'll vote for our conscience. No, I want us to get to a point where we would reject these items. There is no reason, if we have values and we're embodied with the true Nigerian values, we would not accept this vote, this so-called gift of voter inducement by this politician. I remember an experience in Kenya during the presidential elections last year where we deployed observers in Nairobi when agents of politicians were trying to induce voters during the voting procession. That's on the queue. And then there was an alarm that was raised by the people, and the police came in and arrested this person who would be prosecuted and put behind bars. That is what we want to see replicated in Nigeria, where the people who blow the whistles are the electorate during the ongoing elections. And I believe this might likely happen. And yes, the impact of seeing politicians try to buy voters' card. I know that, and this, when we look at our data and some of the results coming in, I know that we would have lesser voter apathy because there's a lot of excitement. Women and young people are really excited to go and cast their ballots. There will be lesser voter apathy. And that's why I see politicians are investing heavily to collect this PVC, or to rather buy this PVC, collect them, save them, and not release them to these people as we go into election, because they know that a lot of people will come out and vote. And when you see people come out and vote, what it means is, it brings a lot of credibility into the election and the process. And because there's also trust in INEC. INEC have never enjoyed this level of trust in terms of public perception and public support, which is really encouraging. And I must commend INEC, and I hope the politicians will not interfere in the mandate as prescribed in the Constitution by INEC.
In other words, there's a lot of optimism still on the part of young people and almost everybody about this election.
Yes, there is. If you even look at the collection of PVCs and the reports we're getting, every local government you go to, you see thousands of people who have trooped out and say, we want to collect our PVCs. That's because they trust the process and the system, and they've given a vote of, and that's a vote of confidence to INEC, that we know that the fact that INEC is deploying technology, which is BVAS, it brings that integrity of the system and process. So yes, there is that optimism across Nigeria.
All right, well, we'll hope that continues, because at the end of the day, those are the warnings, if not any shots in the arm, that politicians need to ensure that they get the message, get the memo that, look, it cannot be business as usual. You either do what the people want, you shape in or shape out, as a lot of people say. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Hamza Lawal, Chief Executive, Connected Development, and Follow the Money. Let's take a look at some messages coming through from you. I've got this email, excuse me, from Adenike. We're talking about politicians and the electoral process. It says, it is disheartening to see the amount of energy and resources we are expending to checkmate the excesses of the politicians to compromise our electoral process. Going forward, I think we should build compulsory integrity training for people who desire elective positions.
Possibly. Well, this is from Dr. Peter Awudi, who says, while it is clear that the conduct of the 2023 general elections require a multi-agency collaboration, it is incumbent on INEC to play its constitutional role to the best of its abilities. To this end, there should be a constant reassurance of the Nigerian electorate that the elections will hold and that they will be credible too. Nigeria shall succeed. Amen.
Add to that, if we all play our part. This one is from Festus Akiboyewa. He says, as we're in the market for a new president, governors and legislators, we must beware of fake news that's designed to create chaos that could lead to postponement of the 2023 elections. Nigerians are ready to line up in front of the ballot box come February 2023. Period. Sounds like a command to INEC.
So there's a period dot and a period word.
Yeah.
Now, this next tweet is from Prof. Enakena. Says, federal government only cannot fix the mire of sniveling electoral malpractices in Nigeria without the collaboration of state or local government and the people. All hands must be on deck to sniff out any ounce of perceived insecurity that can scuttle the electoral process, he tweets.
All right, so that will be interesting. That is the show today. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Thank you. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Yes, thank you for sharing your morning with us. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
It's a unique day, 111. That's 11-1. So may you remain tops in all you do. Have a fantastic day. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.